I'm someone who truly believes that leadership is never about one person. Leadership is about when people get behind a vision, an idea, and work together and in concert and in unique and renewed ways to make that a reality. And so everything I share with you tonight is really intended, hopefully, not just to tell you what we're doing, not just to tell you what policy leaders in Indianapolis are doing, or leaders at City Hall are trying to do, but I hope each of you leaves here tonight with a sense of a little bit of a burden on your heart for how you can play a role in seizing this moment in the life of our state, because it takes all of us to do it. But I think it's exactly the kind of moment that Hoosiers relish and Hoosiers always step forward. But first and foremost, let me say, as we celebrate the progress we've made in recent years, Indiana's the fiscal envy of the country. At a time when most states are struggling just to balance their books, many states are raising taxes, many are struggling in a sea of red ink. I mean, look at us. We have the largest budget surplus in our state's history. We're one of only 9 states in the United States of America that has a AAA bond rating. And that is a tribute to the leadership of the Indiana General Assembly, and it's a leadership to my predecessor, Governor Mitch Daniels, who led this state with great distinction and great capability. And Indiana should be proud. But as we gather here tonight, we gather in this beautiful place and in this prosperous city, let's remember, there's 250,000 Hoosiers that are out of work. The reality is that a lot of our schools are lagging behind, some are lagging way behind. And most painfully, and maybe most insightfully, 20% of the children in this state live in poverty, according to national standards. I think this is a moment where we ought to recognize the progress that we've made. Recognize the fact that we've made that progress because we've had a vision and we put those principles into practice. But with so many Hoosiers hurting, with so many small businesses struggling, now's the time for us to roll our sleeves up and continue on the path and reach even higher in the Hoosier State. A couple of things that I'm recommending to our leadership at the General Assembly and that we're carrying forward that I want to mention tonight. First and foremost, I truly believe that whether it's in our personal life or in public life, everything begins with integrity. In our personal life, it's personal integrity, but in public life, it's fiscal integrity. I think the first obligation of our state government going forward is to honestly balance our budgets and hold the line on spending. I think our state must live within our means and never spend a single dollar more than it collects. We submitted in that vein an honestly balanced budget that holds the line on spending. The budget that we submitted in this last week to the Indiana General Assembly is a budget that actually holds state increases in spending a full percentage point less than inflation. I've always had this idea that the government's budget should never grow faster than the family budget. And we continue to practice that fiscal discipline. Secondly, though, we've got to continue to make our primary investments in ways that are going to encourage capital formation and job creation and growth. And we do that in our budget as well. The budget that we submitted includes nearly $18 million over 2 years to ensure Hoosier adult workers have the skills they need to work in today's economy. We include nearly $350 million in excess reserves for roads and bridges and infrastructure. We contemplate a new partnership with Indiana's life sciences industries and our universities to spur research and produce high-paying jobs by creating something called an applied research enterprise. We're also encouraging the formation of an agricultural innovation corridor, which will invite capital formation and investment that will continue to make Indiana a state that is at its core and at its heart about agriculture. We provided resources for continuing economic development efforts, and we put all of this in the context of a budget that puts jobs first. So, first and foremost, let me just say, as you look at the budget, as you consider the debates going forward, just understand that as we prepare and we propose a direction for Indiana, we begin with fiscal responsibility, but we also believe that we need to continue to invest in education and in roads and in the kind of activities that will generate economic growth and opportunity in this community and all across the state. But secondly, the budget that we offer, as you may have read in newspaper accounts, puts taxpayers first. And I've always held the view that government should only collect what it needs. And when government collects more than it needs, it should return that money to the hardworking taxpayers who earned it in the first place. And as we look at Indiana's budget today, at record surpluses, as we look at an opportunity to fund our priorities and even increase funding in areas like roads and infrastructure, the reality is we can do all of that because of the stewardship of the recent past. We can maintain a strong balance sheet, and I believe the time has come also, and we can afford to reduce taxes on every Hoosier in the city and on the farm across the board by 10%. I want to make that case to you tonight because the business leaders that are in this room are going to be the influencers in the days ahead. The reasons why I'm recommending that we consider reducing taxes now is first and foremost, we can afford to do it. All the priorities that I just described to you, including an increase in education funding, an increased commitment to workforce and infrastructure, can all be done if we can preserve a strong balance sheet and still reduce taxes for every Hoosier. But why cut the personal income tax rate? Well, here's a couple ideas for you to think about. First, at a time when federal taxes have just gone up on all working Hoosiers, on most small businesses and family farms, and most notably of folks in this region, when taxes just went up on our medical device industry in this state and around the country. Now more than ever, I think Hoosiers could use some tax relief because we can afford it. We should do it. Secondly, by reducing the personal income tax rate by 10%, we'll unleash $500 million into the private voluntary economy every year. It'll mean a couple of $100 to working families across the state. But it'll increase the purchasing power of Hoosiers, and it'll make a real difference, not only in families' bottom lines, but in the bottom lines of our communities that'll experience the results of that unleashed capital. Thirdly, and I don't have to tell the small business leaders in this room, but 92% of the small businesses in this state actually file their taxes under the individual income tax code. Now, I strongly support the recent tax reforms that have been adopted by our General Assembly and the prior administration. We reduced taxes on inheritance, we reduced taxes on corporations. But when you look at the fact that 92% of small businesses actually file their taxes under the individual income tax rate, the most effective way to lower taxes on job creators here in the Hoosier State is to lower the personal income tax rate. And lastly, my own personal favorite. We just happened to do a back of the envelope on this. And we found out if Indiana lowers our personal income tax rate by 10%, it'll be official. We'll be the lowest tax state in the Midwest. We might just have to put that on the Welcome to Indiana signs facing out on every interstate. You know, it's about giving Hoosiers more of their hard-earned dollars. It's about giving our small businesses and family farms more resources to invest, to hire, to purchase equipment, to grow. And it's also about making Indiana more competitive. It's about making Indiana's story even a little bit better as we look to attract jobs and investment in the days ahead. But that's just, it's not all about the marketplace. It's not all about investments and budgets. The reality is that if we can't succeed in the classroom, we won't succeed in the marketplace. And in our budget, as I mentioned, we have, for the first time in several years, we have an increase in education funding each of the next 2 years. But I believe in education funding that we need to fund excellence. And we propose to do that in a variety of ways. In our budget, we actually proposed that in the second year increase in education funding, that we tie that to school performance metrics. We also provide $6 million in teacher excellence grants so that we're supporting our high-performing teachers. And I believe Indiana should be proud of the fact that our state today provides educational scholarships to underprivileged families more generously than any other state in the United States of America, and we ought to look to expand choices to families at the point of the need all across this state. By empowering families to choose where their kids go to school, regardless of their income, whether it's another public school, a public charter school, a private school, we're going to improve education across the board. I have to tell you, the reality for me is about education is that lady I mentioned at the top of my remarks, who I hope people all across Indiana get to know and get to know well. She's a wonderful person. She's a mother of our 3 kids. She's an artist. She's a pilot. But she's a school teacher. And my wife Karen has spent her entire career in public and in private school classrooms. We're just absolutely convinced there's nothing that ails education in our state that can't be fixed if we give parents more choices and teachers more freedom to teach. I'm absolutely determined to cut the red tape in the classroom and let our teachers teach our kids to the high standards that we all expect. There's one other aspect about education I want to talk about, and then I'll wrap up with a few thoughts and let you get to the rest of your evening. And that is, look, we in the Hoosier State are an aspirational people. And I think we always ought to convey to every child in Indiana, regardless of where they start in life, that you ought to go to college. When I was raised, my father was the first member of his family to go to college, and I'll never forget growing up on 31st Street in Columbus, Indiana, how many times my dad stuck his finger in my face, my three brothers' face, and said, "You're going to college. Whatever else you do in life, you're going to college." And I think that's an extraordinarily important message. And we've got to continue to send that message to every child, regardless of where they start. And we've got to work to make college more affordable. And in our budget that we submitted to the General Assembly, we've actually increased funding to our state-sponsored colleges and universities, but we are tying our funding to the kind of metrics that will encourage our schools to do a better job helping our kids finish a 2-year degree in 2 years or a 4-year degree in 4 years. We've got to make higher education more affordable in the Hoosier State, men and women, and we're determined to do that. But the reality is that as we look at kids in our all across our state, not every one of our students is college bound. And since I believe that all honest work is honorable work, I think our schools should work for all of our kids, regardless of where they start in life, but regardless of where they want to start in life. And so I think the time has come to make career, technical, and vocational education a priority in every high school in the state of Indiana again. And I ask for your partnership in that effort. Oswego County has already been a leader in this state in this issue, in developing the kind of pathways in schools and working with Ivy Tech locally to give our young people access to the kind of preparation where they can come out of high school or just a little time after high school and go in and get those good-paying entry-level jobs that are available in the exciting medical device industry and other businesses in the region. But you know, this all became very clear to me when I was out traveling, applying for a job in the last year and a half. True story, I was in Attica, Indiana. It was about a year and a half ago. And Rebecca, I may have told you this story before. There I sat in Attica, Indiana. We had a little jobs roundtable, just like we did in Columbia City today. And it was taking place at a company called Harrison Steel. Now, Harrison Steel has been around as long as this Chamber of Commerce, 100 years. It's the largest employer in Attica. And I was sitting right next to Ann Harrison, who is the great-granddaughter of the founder of the company. Big, bustling steel forge business. Very impressive. So I turned to Ann in the course of this jobs conversation, and I said to her, so what's your greatest challenge here locally? And she said, well, actually, we've got 40 positions open here at Harrison Steel, and we can't fill them. She said, we just moved our starting hourly up from about $14 an hour to about $15.50 to try and attract people. I said, you got 40 positions? I said, yes. So I turned to the school board member who was seated at the jobs forum. And I said very innocently and maybe naively, I said, well, talk to me about your vocational education program at Attica High School. Everybody around the table kind of looked down and shook their heads a little bit. And then they said what everybody else in the room knew. Said, we don't have a vocational education program at Attica High School. And I said, this is the largest employer in town, right? Right. People's parents and grandparents work for this, correct. But you can't graduate from high school and have the industry certification to go to work here. You've got to go get a couple more years. And they all shook their head, yes. And that was where the idea was born. It was born in my mind that what we ought to be doing is we ought to be pulling people together with a vision on a regional basis to say, let's bring business leaders together with educators, with local officials, and let's design curriculum in our high schools that give our kids an opportunity to see a pathway to success right out of high school.